Aloha, and welcome to Live at the Legislature, where every week we sit down with members of the House of Representatives to talk about issues, concerns, and legislation moving through the halls of the state capitol. And that will be the last time I will be saying all of that, at least for 2019. This will be our final episode for this season. Last Thursday, the House adjourned. We introduced 3,500 bills, passed out just under 300, but numbers alone don't tell the story of what's been going on here at the state capitol. Neither do the observations of political pundits and media observers who tend to judge a session based on high-profile bills passing or not passing. That's a narrow view of what goes on here. And so today I am joined by Representative Della Al-Belati. She is the House Majority Leader, and we'll be talking about some bills that were not controversial or sexy, but had an impact on the everyday lives of all of our citizens. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Carolyn. I also want to thank Olelo for giving us this opportunity to do Live at the Legislature, to talk to our residents about what's going on here. You are absolutely right. People often criticize the legislature, but they don't really have a full understanding of the whole gamut of bills that we pass and introduce. This session, the House started off really wanting to focus on cost of living issues. I think that's really top of mind of most people. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the bills that we passed, some of the quieter bills, some more high profile, you'll see that we really accomplished quite a bit. Let me start off with early education. We funded 18 Native Hawaiian early education classrooms that we're going to lose federal funding. So that's a very big investment in the future. We also put some funding towards SNAP Double Bucks program, which will allow those who receive SNAP funding to be able to use their monies to buy fresh produce in our farmers markets, which then goes back to our local farmers. So really keeping the money here in Hawaii as we double it up with federal funding and private partners. We've supported Community College Promise program, again, helping those who need it the most to be able to afford what we know is an expensive college education. And then those very same individuals, we've also supported HighNet, mm-hmm. which is going to allow those who do receive benefits as they're going to school not to lose those benefits. It will enable them to use their educational work hours as part of their work requirements so that they don't have to worry about putting food on their table as they're studying right. and improving their chances in life. There's so much, Carolyn, I can keep going.
Well, I'm going to ask you some questions too. But let's talk about the one thing that I did want to talk about is prison and bail reform.
Yes.
Now, you would think, well, that doesn't affect me, but it does.
We see the numbers of people incarcerated, and it affects some populations more than others. We know that there's a huge incarceration rate in the Native Hawaiian community, amongst Filipinos, amongst COFA migrants. So we know that it's hitting people and communities especially hard. I think the pretrial reform is going to help us get a better handle of who we know is cycling in the jails, who we know needs more assistance, so that once they have paid their debt to society, that they do have the supports outside so that our community is stronger. Mm-hmm. We also reformed asset forfeiture so that we can ensure that system isn't just money that's being held up, and it's not just cycling, amongst law enforcement, but really only affecting those who are convicted criminals.
Right. Okay.
So lots happening in prison reform.
Well, and let's talk about another reform area now, election reform.
That was another highlight. So we really focused in on the automatic vote recount, and some of that was generated from what we've seen in recent elections. We've also pushed up all-mail voting up to 2020, so we're going to see that. That's going to help us save money in the long run because we don't have to have all these centers open. We do have the safeguards that people can still walk in their ballots if they want, but we are also hoping that it's going to help us increase the numbers of people who are voting. We left some voting reforms on the table, things like automatic voter reform. But with every session, we have bills that we leave on the table that we want to come back to and revisit.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about because we did, the House especially was very ambitious in a package of election reform, campaign reform, money and politics bills. Unfortunately, several of those bills did not make it through end of session. But let's talk about that, because they often focus on, well, you didn't pass half of those, or you didn't do this. This is governing and policymaking is not a sprint, it's a marathon, right?
It absolutely is a marathon. And for those government reforms, those campaign finance reforms, we know that the problem is out there of money in politics. So I'm certain that the House and the Senate will come back next year to tackle those issues. I want to talk about an area of bills that we did leave on the table that relate back to our priority of addressing the high cost of living. I know that there are people out there who are disappointed about minimum wage, paid family leave, the retirement savings account. But what we had this year was a very good discussion about all of those issues. And at the end of the day, those are employer mandates that are going to help, and we want them to help workers, but we really have to balance all of that. So I think all of those are going to come back next year as things that we're going to be able to talk about. Tax credits that were left on the table, other things. Our economic picture is getting a little hazier out there, so we also have to have that in the backdrop. But again, there's lots more to do. I know that the House has set some priorities for the interim. We had a chairs meeting on the very last day of session. As soon as we were done, we were already back at work, thinking about and talking about all of those things we're going to work on during the interim. So I am very certain that the House majority is going to come back with some good ideas, and hopefully some of the more challenging things also ironed out. We still have to have a discussion with the Senate. We still have to continue to have discussions with members of the public, with the administration, with the governor. All of these are a big package deal when it comes down to it.
Well, there have been reports in the media that first it was, the legislature was fighting with the governor. And then most recently, as we close, there was a story in the Star Advertiser that there was friction between the House and the Senate. I thought everything is moving along pretty well, actually. We accomplished a lot together, didn't we?
We did accomplish a lot, and I think what we have to remember is that democracy is a rough and tumble sport, and sometimes, yes, tempers flare. We kind of bump elbows a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think we saw, the governor joined the State House on the floor on Sinai Day, the last day of session. Mm-hmm. We worked very well with the Senate on putting together funding bills that addressed things like the needs of Big Island and the disaster recovery, or Kauai and their continued recovery from the floods from last year. So, yes, again, it's like what we talked about. Political pundits want to focus on the criticism. They want to focus on the areas of conflict. But at the end of the day, we are all working towards making this place a better place for Hawaii's residents, and we do that. It's not always going to be perfect. No. Again, tempers will flare sometimes, but that's okay. We're all big boys and girls here, and I think it's really about doing the people's work here.
Well, they do call it. That's why they call it democracy. In the few remaining minutes that we do have left, I do want to touch upon homelessness and affordable housing. Last session, we passed historic legislation in those two areas. Talk a little bit about that, but more importantly, what we did this year that was maybe not as sexy or glitzy.
So we recommitted funding to that whole slew of homelessness programs, addressing the state rental supplement program, housing first, rapid rehousing. So we continued our commitment and put more monies, or the same amount of monies and a little bit more, towards those programs. Mm-hmm. In the area of affordable housing, we really have to exercise our oversight as a legislature to make sure that the HHFDC, the Housing Corporation, is really moving forward with the projects, because they're overseeing the management of those tax credits that we put out last year, as well as making sure that there's projects coming up of affordable housing developers who are going to build the housing that we need, not simply the housing for the top 1% of the community. So we're exercising our oversight. The House did pass the Aloha Homes study to look at the ideas that have been put forward by the Senate. Mm-hmm. That was a bold idea. I think it fits for Singapore because they have a very different form of democracy than we have. They don't have as many environmental regulations as we have, and that's for good reason. We want to protect our pristine environment for future generations. So we had different considerations. The House didn't turn that away. We're looking at it through a study, and we're going to come back and continue to address issues of homelessness and affordable housing.
And talking a little bit about, again, I think the legislature passed a bunch of clean energy, clean transportation bills that we should be very proud of.
So on the horizon, we know that transportation is undergoing transformation. We're going to see more autonomous vehicles. We already see cars that can park themselves. If you
Better
don't like
than me.
Exactly. I don't like to do that back-end parking. So what we're going to see is more conversation about how can we get clean transportation. That means more electric vehicles on the roads, more hybrids. How are we going to restructure our infrastructure so we have the charging stations throughout the island system and on all islands? This means both Oahu as well as the neighbor islands, because their infrastructure needs are different. We're going to see condominiums and mixed-use retail places needing to have charging stations. So we're well on our way for clean energy.
And then I wanted to, we've got 59 seconds left. Now this year, if you had 10 new representatives, 9 Democrats, 1 Republican. Based on my observation, it was a diverse, outspoken group. They weren't afraid to make their opinions known and get charged. How would you assess their first session?
You know, in my estimation, we had a very good group of freshman legislators. Good questions. They brought interesting ideas to the table. I think they pushed members to think about communities at large, looking at ways that we can be fiscally responsible. We had some really good bills coming out. You know, I want to give a shout out to Representative Scott Watayoshi. You know, we have that gift card bill.
That's right.
If you have if you have less than $5 in a card, you're going to be able to redeem it from a retailer. If the governor does not veto that, that bill.
And governor, do not veto that. We all have gift cards that we have 5 cents on. Thank you for joining us again, Representative, and thank all of you for being with us live at the legislature, and God willing, we will see you next year. Aloha.
Do you know your legislators? Visit capital.hawaii.gov and enter your street name to find detailed information about your representatives and senators. From your district number to the committees and current bills your legislators have introduced, this is an easy way to stay up to date with what is happening in your community. If you're looking for detailed information concerning Hawaii State Senate and House hearings, please visit olelo.org/gov-archives. Videos are arranged by date, with the most recent at the top of the list. You can also search the on-demand media library by typing keywords into the search box.
Are you looking for an easy way to get involved in the legislative process? Stop by the Public Access Room located in room 401 at the Hawaii State Capitol. The Public Access Room provides citizens of Hawaii's facilities, services, and equipment to enhance their ability to participate in the legislative process.
Good morning and welcome back to the final episode of Live at the Legislature for 2019, where throughout the legislative session we've gone through week by week everything that's been going on in each representative's district and here at the state capitol. Joining us today is Representative Jean Ward, the representative of House District 17 of Hawaii Kai to Kalama Valley, who also serves as the minority leader. And next to him is Representative Val Okimoto, freshman from Mililani Mauka, House District 36. Both of you,
No longer a freshman. Already one
But
session.
going into the freshman
She
interim.
survived the first session.
I survived.
Should have a t-shirt. I survived my first session.
So we heard, I guess, sort of a tale of 2 legislative sessions this year. We had, from what the media said, that the legislature, quite frankly, has dropped the ball on anything from climate change to cost of living to, I think this morning in Civil Beat was just, we introduced bad bill after bad bill for just a bunch of national headlines. We heard the majority leader say that, we have to essentially solve the problems, or at least help in solving the problems of every aspect of society here in Hawaii. There's 33 committees between the House and the Senate and 76 members from very different communities who all have to get along. So Rep. Ward, the first question to you is it fair to have that sort of criticism for this session, given everything that's been said?
Well, if this was a classroom and we had to give a report card, I'd say it fits the C grade that I think I would give it. It didn't do anything outstanding, but before I say anything, I should thank those faithful Olelo people who get up early in the morning and watch us. And so far, some of them are not bored, but some of them may be. And this is our final one, but I want to thank you, and I want to thank Sanford and Olelo and all the crew that comes out and you to ask us these good questions. So how did we do as a session? Well, mediocrity is probably it. We had a Christmas tree light. I think you heard the majority leader kind of, we did this, we did that. It was kind of a Christmas tree light, but I think mostly it's going to be known for what I'm not very happy to say I'm going to report is that it's going to be the decrim session when we put marijuana up front, and we had 3 grams with only kind of a slap on the wrist, $130, kind of like a traffic fine. My problem with that session and that moniker is that this is a slippery slope. It's really on its way to recreational. And one of my complaints as a freshman was that we never use data before we make policy. The data says we don't even have the HPD or any of the police departments arresting people with 3 grams. So in effect, that thing has already been in place, and that's why I suspect it's more of a slippery slope into decriminalization. Some of the good thing, of course, though, was, we did do, if there's a close race, I think that was a good bill. If it's 100 votes or a percentage of less than 1%, I think those probably are landmarks. But the things that we failed to do, and I feel very strongly about this, we didn't fund enough money to get Hawaiian Homes off and running again. And I know I could go on a whole 12 minutes on that. But we failed to do that. We kind of kicked the can by giving just more money to the homeless. I don't think people really believe that we've got really a handle on the homeless. We don't even have a game plan coming out of the governor's office. But I'll reserve that for the freshman who probably has a fresher insight on what we've done in this session.
Rep. Okimoto, what Representative Ward had just mentioned, decrim, which was another issue that was very important to you. In your community, you're a mother of 2 young girls, and this was an issue that you spoke about, and so what was your opinion on that?
We took a survey of our community, and the constituents of our community vehemently, was opposed to any kind of legalization of recreational marijuana. And although, in our floor sessions, there was a lot of back and forth about why it's good, why it's not. It was the only bill that I actually, as a freshman, gave a floor speech on because I'm that passionate about it. Again, as a mother, as an educator, I think it's very irresponsible for us as a legislature to pass these types of bills without really seeing what's going to happen in the future. And there's so many negative impacts, negative effects that can come from the recreational marijuana legalization of that. And although it was repeatedly stated on the floor that this isn't the same thing, we're not ignorant. We know where this is heading. And so I'm grateful that I had the opportunity, although the bill didn't go the way I had hoped it would go. I can sleep at the end of the night, at the end of the day, knowing that I had voiced my concerns and voted my conscience and the way that my constituents had wanted me to vote.
And then
I should footnote, the only time I was censored in the last number of sessions was this session when my speech on decriminalization mentioned that, Mr. Speaker, most everyone in this house, on this floor, has experimented at some time in their life with marijuana. And as I finished my speech, the speaker said, strike those references to people who have.
And I sit next to him, so I get to see all the fun. I get to see all the excitement, right, front row and center.
And so the next time I spoke on decrim, I said, anybody in this building probably has experimented. And I got censored again. So in one way, we're kind of being very liberal. Decrim is no big deal. But you, Ward, if you speak on the floor and say people in this building have used it, I think we got a double standard. I just wanted to note that for the record.
And going into, I guess, another wrap-up of session, when Rep. Okimoto first started, was there any advice that you had? This is, I think, your 20th session for both of your tenures here in the House.
I think it was vote your conscience as the big thing. Speak out for the people of your district. And she did. She's probably known as Miss with Reservations. She probably had more with reservation speeches than
I'm hoping
many.
I have the most no votes, too. I'm going to go get a roll of that.
Because she's nuancing the legislation. She's looking at it in detail, trained as a CPA. They look at a lot of detail, sometimes maybe too many details. But look, we had 2,000 to 3,000 bills in the beginning. We're down to about 298. You know, there's a lot of chaff, and and the people should know that a lot of this stuff we're doing is, I would say, management, administrative stuff. I can't imagine us really spending all the time we did on some of these Manini things, like how do you define going through a crosswalk? How do you get who can exhume a corpse from a cemetery? Those things should be decentralized within the government. They shouldn't be at this level of not that we should be doing everything super important, but some of the stuff that we deal with, people should know that 80 to 90% of our time is spent with things that really doesn't make a whole lot of difference in the lives of the people. And this really leads to my major complaint about this area. What we forgot about was the paychecks for the families of the people of Hawaii. Economic development, economic micro and macroeconomics, we kind of pushed aside. Case in point, we have the potential to be the Hollywood of the Pacific. I've said this a number of times. What we did, instead of giving a real robust credit for the movie theater, the movie industry, we gave them only a $15 million bump. So instead of 70 million, we gave them 50. I think we've lost that potential. We have the sports potential. We have a stadium by which we're not using naming rights. I spoke twice on the floor about put naming rights in to save taxpayers' money. We have a diplomacy. We have a possibility of becoming the Geneva of the Pacific. Those kind of economic advantages, they don't come by and just sit there. They have to be taken advantage of, like we've done with tourism and military. But in terms of the potential to be something other than the standard people leaving, people wondering what we're going to do economically, we put the economic stuff aside. And I think that's a big, big area that we need to look at in 2020.
And Reba Hokimoto, do you wanted to follow up?
Well, I was thinking a lot about, what you had asked Rep. Ward and what kind of advice he'd given to me. That was, he gave a lot of advice, and we met when I was still on the campaign trail. Well, one thing that he always tells me is to not let my head get bigger than myself, and he's learned that that's how I am. I was raised very humbly on the island of Kauai, so that's one thing that I hold value to, and I think you can verify that I'm not bigger than my head. Anyway. But with the bills, I think the one thing that I really appreciated this is my first time in the Ledge, and I had no prior knowledge about what to expect, and I think it's kind of good that I came in fresh. I really appreciated how we had a lot of task forces or pilot programs, because I think in the past it seems like we would just have this program and start it, and then later on let's backtrack and see how to make it work. Again, as an educator, that makes no sense to me. You usually want to have a plan and then have the baseline for the plan, have a target and benchmarks, and then see where it goes. And so I think I saw that a lot, either with resos or with bills, task forces and pilot programs. I have to agree with Rep. Ward in the sense where my constituents, one of the top thing that they're concerned about was the cost of living here. And I don't know if, I was on the Education Committee and Ag and Tourism, so not directly connected to bills in that area, but I'm not sure if we passed bills that would help the everyday person. And I had tried to present bills that would help educators in my district. There's so many educators, and I came from that background also. I wanted to be able to help teachers to bring something home more. If we can't increase their salaries and somehow get them a tax credit, that didn't go through either. So I'll fight for that next time. I'm always going to be fighting for the educators and for our Kiki in the schools.
And of course, cost of living, I think every year is something that we talk about. It is always top of mind.
And we do nothing about it, or we do very little about it. But let me come in about what I forgot. I gave her probably the most advice about. And let me say, this is intelligence with humility, because I've seen the rise and fall of so many young people who think that it's all about them, and their head swells and they jump out too ambitiously, or they do and say things that they otherwise shouldn't be doing. So you are a good role model for people who may be watching or who may be freshmen. And the freshman class really hit the ground running. So we're very proud of Val.
I'm grateful that it was mentioned in the earlier clip that there was one Republican and 9 Democrats. I'm the one. I am the 1/10. But I'm grateful because the freshmen that I have been reelected with, we worked really well together, and we were respectful. We have very differing opinions and beliefs, but yet we were able to do it respectfully. And I'm hoping that as we continue, I'm hoping to get reelected, as we continue in our careers, that we can continue that relationships, but also be able to work together even if we don't agree on every issue.
Because we have a lot of territory to cover. We have to stop the brain drain of our young people. We've got to stop the exit of even those lower and middle class people are saying, look, I can't make it here. A lot of people are saying, I'm never going to be able to buy a house. We've got to be able to get that down payment issue, which I think in our first interview it was come Aina, come home. We're going to have for a veteran, a guaranteed down payment. If you have a graduate high school from Hawaii and a BA or above from the mainland, you can come back and have the first payment of your down payment taken care of. Those things need to be reconsidered.
A lot of work that you both and myself will have during the interim. But it's been a great session with you both, and to the viewers at Olelo and all the staff. Thank you so much for helping us and to host this program. We will see you next year here at Live at the Legislature.